I'm Ken, and you're watching Kilt Can Cook, the Scottish cooking channel that encourages young men and women to have the confidence and competence they need to conquer the kitchen. Welcome to another episode of Red-Headed Reading, wherein I read to you a short story of science fiction and fantasy. Today we're covering Mr. John C. Wright's Pale Realms of Shade from his book, collection of stories, A Book of Feasts and Seasons. This is perfectly in time for Easter Sunday. In fact, it was written for Easter. So I think it's a very good story for right now, since today is actually Thursday, tomorrow is Good Friday, which is when I hope to release this. And if you've come from Mr. Wright's website, I encourage you to hit the like and subscribe button. I don't usually read stories, but I don't always read stories, but I do a lot of cooking recipes, and I think you might enjoy them. Anyway, quick note, this story is a kind of dark noir ghost story. It's a supernatural detective story, and it was set in New York. So I was like working on a New York accent, trying to Brooklyn it up. Forget about it. What's the matter, you? But my New York accent's rubbish. So since this isn't a story for a posh British voice, I'm going to be reading it in my natural Glaswegian. So bear with me. It's been a long time since I read anything in my normal voice. Pale Realms of Shade. It was not the being dead that I minded. It was the hours. No one ever calls me up during the day, and most people decide to wait until after midnight for some reason. I am a morning person, or was, so meetings in the still, dark hours lost between midnight and the dawn make me crabby. This time it was not some comfortable seance room or picturesque graveyard with moss-covered stone angels. I came to the surface of mortal time on a street corner of some American city, mid-20th to early 21st century. You can tell from the height of the building that is American, and from the fact that the road names are on signs rather than walls. And 22nd century streets, of course, are not lit up at night. The main road was called Saint Street. The small alley was called Peter Way. I was crossed by Saint and Peter. Great. I smelled her perfume before I saw her. I turned. There she was, outlined against the street lamp beyond. I could not mistake her silhouette, slender, alluring, like a she-panther as she walked. Matthias? She breathed in a low whisper. Her voice was throbbing music to me, despite everything that had happened. You look well, considering. Lorelei, I grunted. She was just wearing a blouse and skirt and a knee-length grey coat, but on her the outfit could have made the cover of a fashion magazine. Or a girly magazine. Her wild mass of gold-red hair was like a waterfall of bright fire tumbling past her shoulders to the small of her back. Atop, like a cherry on strawberry ice cream, was perched a brimless cap. My arms ached with the desire to take her and hold her, but I could never touch her, or, for that matter, anyone, e'er again. She sighed and rolled her enormous emerald green eyes. Sweetheart, this time you have to tell me if you were murdered. You have to. I took a puff of an imaginary cigarette and watched the smoke, equally imaginary, drift off in a plume more solid than I was. I ain't saying. But you must. I can't rest until I know. Now, I know when and where I was, because I died the day the Korean War ended, July 27th. Mark the day on the calendar. That was the day I gave up smoking. That was only a few months after, judging from the dry leaves scuttling across the sidewalk, the bare branches of the one tree surrounded by concrete across the street. Late October or early November. My heart stopped, I said. I died of natural causes. She pointed a slender finger at the holes in my trench coat. You're dripping. I looked down. The rest of my body was black and white, like an old talkie, a thing of sable mist and silvery moonlight. Only the blood was red, as bright as Lorelei's lipstick. It wasn't something I was deliberately imagining myself to look like. I guess it was part of my self-image, subconscious or something. That seemed unfair. I had had a tricky subconscious my whole life. It was one of the things I had thought I had gotten rid of, left behind. That's natural, I said. When bullets pass through the lung cavity, they naturally make large holes. One of them went through my heart and caused it to stop. like I said. Still making jokes. She stamped her foot in anger, which sent a vibration jiggling up her curves and made her hair tremble and spread. I was reminded of a cat puffing up its fur in anger. I looked her in the eye. Lorelei, just leave it alone. Forget about me and get on with your life. She was good at hiding her anger. She took a moment to tuck her hair behind her ears and drew a calm breath and spoke in a voice of icy calm. Your partner found your body. He unlocked the door and walked in. He said you were shot at close range, point blank. From the burns on your coat, the barrel was touching your coat. Your own weapon was still in your shoulder holster. The holster was snapped. That means a friend killed you. I said nothing. She said, Who was it? I know it wasn't a Campbell. He would not use it. He would use his blade, not a pistol. Was it Sean? Was it Harvey? He didn't have that many friends. I don't remember what happened, I said. You always get that same dumb look at your face when you try to lie to me. You are a memory. That's all a ghost is. How can a memory not remember? Fine, I said, gritting my teeth. I wondered how it was I could still feel the muscles in my jaw and temples tense up with my teeth, and my whole body were imaginary. I was cleaning my revolver. It went off by accident. Funny. 7 bullets were fired, she said, raising one of her perfectly arched eyebrows. I reloaded. Sylvester said the bullet went through the office window behind you and couldn't be recovered for forensics. We didn't know the caliber. We assume it was an automatic. You were standing up and fell backwards over the desk. No evidence of burglary. The top drawer of your file cabinet was open, but the lock wasn't forced. The file drawer was empty. What does he know? Sly's always been an idiot. You had to go to the cops and say you were murdered. If it is ruled a suicide, the insurance company are an eggs. And I have bills to pay. And here I was thinking you had grown sentimental. It was Sylvester, wasn't it? He wanted... She pursed her lips like she was about to say the word me, but then realised how that might sound. The lips just stayed closed, a thin, very red line, still looking very kissable. I should have kissed her more often in life, back when I could. That was a thought like an icicle stabbing through in my brain. It was more a feeling than a thought. But then I wondered how she could still have this hold over me. Can a ghost suffer from testosterone poisoning? Even dead, were men still staps for dames? She must have thought so. I looked at her left hand. She was wearing white gloves. I adjusted my eyes and the gloves became transparent to me. You're not wearing a ring anymore. Her expression grew stiff. Her eyes narrowed like she just stepped on a tack and didn't want to let out a yelp. I glanced at the cracked sidewalk underfoot and noticed something odd. Why here? Why this alley? There was no magic circle painted on the ground. No candles, no crystal ball, none of the rigmarole usually associated to call someone up like me. All the stores and shops across the street were closed, wire mesh drawn over the plate glass windows. All dark as a graveyard, except for one lonely pawn shop with a broken neon sign that read, All ours, pen. We sell God. We fix it. The other storefronts were flea markets, liquor stores, gun shops, or strip joints. I was expecting to see a palm reader studio, or maybe a tattoo parlour with some satanic emblems hanging in the windows. Something that could pull a shade like me all the way into the world, so that people could see me. But there was nothing. I closed my eyes and I could feel the heat beating from her body, the life in her flesh like an electric tingle in the air. But no one else, not for yards in any direction, no one hiding down the alley, no one watching from a nearby window. I opened my eyes again. Now her expression changed. Her eyelids were half lowered and her lips half parted, and her head almost tilted a little to the left, as if I had said something amusing. I had to pawn my wedding ring because I'm out of money. I can't be happy until your spirit is at rest. You have to tell Judge O'Keefe and tell him who you murdered you. Then you can collect on the insurance money. She pouted and shrugged and looked coy. Being a detective's wife, I knew the risks I ran. Especially a detective like you, with silver bullets in your gun and a crucifix under your flak jacket. I knew one day you might come home in a box. So we made book on those risks. Your number came up. It's my money. If you think about it, all the times I wondered, all the times I was up late in bed, in our cold bed, just me, just worrying about you. I earned every penny. I turned my head away. I couldn't stand seeing her performance. Or, if it were on the level, that would somehow be worse. I tried to sink below the surface of mortal time, back into the ocean of eternity. Nothing happened. It was like standing on a sheet of ice, with my feet stuck in place. What was holding me here? What had called me here? Turning back, I took a step towards her. Interesting, that means I could move. The memory holding me here was not this spot, just this area. Harshly I said to her, Sly will pay your bills. Have you moved in with him yet? Cuddled up to play house. You've dug all the gold out of the mine called Mrs. Flint, and now you can move on to him. You can be his kept woman for a few months, until enough time passes you can come out of mourning and blackmail him into marrying you. He was always stiff in the trousers for you, and that makes him even stupider than even his admittedly low standard, because the blood rushes toward his groin and away from his brain, leaving it limp and... I saw her eyes start to change with anger. There's a reason why the Irish are said to have a temper, and it's not just because the English bait the snot out of them for 1,000 years of history. No, there's something wild and Celtic in the change of her face, and I saw in her the old, fiery blood of fairy kings, who danced on the wind-roaring mountainsides underneath an unscarred moon, or who battled with the giants from the sea. Her change of expression looked almost like when some shade like me steps into a body not warded from us. The whole demeanour changes, the stance and look and voice. At that moment, she wanted me dead, or deader, or whatever the word is. She swung her hand through my head, or, I should say rather, through the empty air where I was imagining my head to be. Lorelei snatched her hand back, no doubt because of the cold, but she had not hit my face any more than she could have hit a shadow or a fading memory. But suddenly, the ice, or whatever it was that had me held fixed at that point of time, was broken. I sank like a stone beneath the surface of time, and saw the flickering shadows of events, past and future events, floating about me like fragments of dreams. Pardon for the pause. Aye, that's the stuff. When you are near the mortal world, it's like looking through a pane of rippling glass for a few minutes before and after wherever you were lying before you died. Dreamers can sometimes see this, if they wander away from their sleeping bodies, which is why you sometimes see a repeat of the day's events, or a glimpse of something yet to come. If you dive deeper, the place gets closer to the timeless, and you can see far off events in the future or past, like vast shapes on the horizon. You can hear dimly the ancestral voices calling warnings, the screams of fear and shouts of joy, or catch the roar like the echoes or reflections of a world-shattering battle, or glimpse the lighting flares as if reflected from low-hanging clouds against the titanic shadows which move. Visionaries and monks in contemplative prayer can see these things. Sometimes. There's a light far below underfoot. It's like a maelstrom because it sucks and pulls at you. I can fight it off. I looked through the nearby dreams and clouds and saw only a day or so away from the present location. Maybe the future, maybe the past. I let myself get pulled into it. I was standing in the office, of course. Where else would a ghost go? There was a new carpet underfoot. New carpet. In all our years together, Sly had never sprung for a bottle of hooch, much less something to make the office look nice. Either he had money, or he was expecting some. I did that trick with my eyes so I could see through the carpet. There was the blood stain. My blood stain, of course. Where else would a ghost be standing? There was the plate glass window. The full moon was bright. and it was shined through the lettering on the glass, so that their shadows fell around me and through me. I didn't cast a shadow, of course. Shadows didn't cast shadows. The word psychic was etched into the window in elf letters, so it didn't cast a shadow either. Only someone with a second sight could have seen the real sign. Sylvester Steele, Psychic Private Investigator. There was also a distorted image of the office all around me. A memory. It was a memory of unlocking and opening the door just there, reaching a hand toward the light switch, but freezing when I saw a long black shape on the floor, the shape of a fallen body. Litter from the desk was all around, and the window was broken with bullet holes. One of the bullets had struck just above the letter I in flint. Panic and fear choked me. I was drawn step by awful step, in the frozen way we walk in nightmares, where distances are distorted and walking 3 steps takes 3 eternities. I put out my hand, hoping it was Nahim, hoping, praying the only prayer I knew. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I... The body turned over before I could touch it, flopping like a dead fish. He grinned at me, a sick, empty, skull-like grin, full of anger, but no mirth. "Oh my God!" a human voice screamed. "It wasn't me, Matt! I didn't do it!" That voice was in the real world. The memory that had drawn me here was rippled and faded. The broken window was whole again. Sly was sleeping. No, not anymore. He had been sleeping on the rollaway bed we sometimes used here in the office for late nights or stowing some client who needed a place for one night. It folded into a couch, and there was a holster on the back where he used to keep a revolver. Now, he was naked and the sheets were all twisted round him, and they were soaked with sweat. And Cy was fumbling for the holster, finding nothing. "There's another gun in the top drawer," I said, trying to light an imaginary cigarette. I could get the glow of the match reflecting off my cupped fingers correct, but the light was pearly white rather than red, and the taste was off. The one marks A. A for automatic. But we keep that flying cabinet locked, remember? So who did you give the key to? Or is it to whom? His eye has had trouble focusing on me. "Matt? Is that you?" That surprised me, so I dropped my cigarette. It didn't fall, but floated near me at shoulder height, like an annoying little fish. "Can you hear me?" He nodded. "Oh, I can hear you." Faintly. "Lorelei wants me to prove I didn't commit suicide so she could get the insurance money." That made him tremble. He went over to the hat rack. His hat wasn't on the hat rack, but his clothes were. He got his pants and put them on, put on his shirt, but he didn't bother to button it up. I knew him pretty well, knew his little habits and tricks. This was what the actors call business. He was doing little ordinary things to give his nerves a chance to die down. I wondered where his hat was. It was an ugly thing with a garish hat band, but he was well attached to it. He would doff his hat with exaggerated courtesy to the maidens, passing by with a flourish like a cavalier, but only to the fair ones. He walked slowly around me, got behind the desk and sat in my chair. I suppose it was his chair now. His old chair had 2 books and a potted plant to top it. Maybe he'd always envied me my view. If so, he'd never mentioned it once. And why a potted plant? He didn't strike me as a plant kind of guy. Maybe I didn't know him so well after all. "Light up a cigarette," I said. "If I can smell one, maybe I can remember what they're like." He chuckled without mirth. "Oh, like that voodoo case down south. Remember that one? The Baron said that cigar smoke called the loa. Whiskey too." But he didn't light up. "I kind of liked the old sign," I said, nodding at the window. "Thought it was kind of funny." "Gave you top billing," he said with a grimace. "So do you have any messages for the living?" "Sure," I said, swatting the pathetic imaginary cigarette out of the air next to me. "Look for a stock market break next year in 1954. There'll be large gains for long-term equity investors." "Matt," he said sadly, "this is 1954. It's been months since you appeared to Rory. The insurance company paid. George O'Keefe looked into her heart with the special way he has, and saw her memories, and he believed her, and ruled in her favour. so I know he didn't commit suicide. I looked around again, this time with my eyes closed. I could feel the beat of life inside of him, like heat from an unseen campfire. I finally understood what drove vampires crazy. Being able to feel being alive, but not being able to truly be alive. Drinking the living blood and feeling it inside you for just a moment. Almost like the real thing. Undead onanism. I opened my eyes. You were dreaming about me. That is what called me here. Ma, I didn't do it. I'm not the one who killed you. Of course not, I said harshly, letting my face look more like a skull and less like a man. You never had the guts. Hands shaking, he opened the cigarette case on the desk. The nice silver one that Lorelei bought me as a present, and lit up. I did like the smell, and it did melt my face back into a more human look. Maybe that voodoo doctor had been right about tobacco and ghosts. Too bad I'd not been killed in a tobacco shop. So, why are you haunting me? He asked in a small voice. He didn't look at me. His eyes were resting on the open cigarette case. Maybe he was counting how many smokes he had left. Is that why you're here? I looked at the safe, made the surface invisible to me, and saw some of the relics and special candles missing. Good grief! Do you have Father Pat over at your apartment performing an exorcism? Really? To allay me? Actually, he's at Lorelei's house in the suburbs, along with Brother Sean and the big black cat. Your house, I guess. Your name is still on the lease. You called the big black cat on me? You bastard! I wondered how much that had set the partnership back, either in money or favours owed. The cat was expensive and mean. He and I had never even called on the cat for the murder of St. Mark's in the Bowery. Then I remembered it wasn't a partnership anymore. It was just his money. Why don't you rest in peace? He demanded. Why are you haunting me? You've got a nice crypt at St. Patrick's. It hasn't been legal to put any bones there for 100 years. Do you know the strings I had to pull to get that, and the favours I had to call in? How many? Lots. I was up in the Catskills with 2 weeks with a bazooka on my shoulder, chasing a hut running on chicken legs, just to get the great grey man to owe me a favour. And listen to me, well, which I traded to the lady in the well, so as she could put me right with the commissioner. But I did it. We got you interred with carved stone with your name on it, and everything. Loving husband and faithful soldier, it says. Rory and me picked the words. Father Donovan said the blessing. He's blind, but he said he could see you there, smiling. I light a candle for you every Sunday, and 2 during Lent. I did not remember that scene. From my point of view, it hadn't happened yet. The same way a timeless ghost can now and again tell living men their future, men can prophesy to us. St. Patrick's had special crypts set aside for people like us. Sly and I and a good many people in Breezy Point in Queens, Bensonhurst in Brooklyn, and Woodlawn in the Bronx are twilight people like us. Our folks all come from Terryglass Parish in the Diocese of Killaloy in Cashel. St. Columba of Terryglass, one of the 12 Apostles of Ireland, founded the great abbey there. The grey folk of the grey lake, Loch Riach, over which he was lord, are the ones from whom we get our sight. Back before St. Patrick came, the doctors of Terryglass were sometimes sold into marriage and thrown into the water with weights on their ankles, because their fathers made bargains with voices that spoke out of the night, promising great things. The bride girls of the Grey Lakes didn't quite die, and sometimes they could send their babies to the shore in a coracle for sunlight people to find and raise, and woe to him who passed by the crying child and didn't pick him up. I remember Gramps telling me how when the storm wind was high and the horned huntsman was riding with his devil dogs along the black clouds, the lake water subsided and grew strangely clear. One could see the carved columns and twisted spires of the pagan ruins, where the serpents that St. Patrick later banished were worshipped of old, in fanes far underneath the waters of Loch Riach, and seaweed-coated temples lit by strange torches. And one could see the watching eyes that looked upward, never asleep, looking back. Gramps used to scare the piss out of me with his old stories. Lorelei had some Twilight blood too, on her mother's side, and she had the sight. Most of our customers do. Normal people couldn't even see the crimes folk hired us to solve. Pardon me for coffee break. I love this story. It's the mythology of my people. It's beautiful. So, you go to mass now? I asked, sceptically. He was not what I thought of as a praying man. Regular as clockwork. He nodded. I was afraid he was going to say religiously, but that might have been o'er his head. Ever since you departed, we all loved you, jackass or new. The boys in at McSorley's hoisted a cup to your loving memory. The thought of the old gang made me curious. I suddenly felt myself shrinking a wee bit, looking more human. So I just went to know. I wanted to know how Lorelei was doing, if she missed me, that sort of thing. But instead I said, nice digs. I wanted to know how you pay for all this stuff. Is that a Svara on the shelf? I've had some good cases lately. Remember the Crow murders? Turns out the Crow cousins were Renfrews, playing footsie with the night folk of the Blood Feast. And then there was a whole coven of drowned ones, cooperating with smugglers and Nicors, causing all those wrecks up the coast, near the haunted lighthouse the Good Witch uses. And it turns out the Good Witch wasn't so good. We tried to take her alive, but the gold-hooved Snow White harriet tore off her mask and trampled her, just like that. You got the harriet to come with you. Well, some of the buildings in the city are old enough to come awake, and they like me. And the commissioner likes anyone who keeps the buildings quiet, and knows Arthgal and Calidor in the Summer Queen's court. So I called the harriet. After the lighthouse witch had her mask come off, and she was all worms inside. Me and Murray got all of her files. She wrote everything down on dry autumn leaves so she could keep track and blackmail and curse her ex-partners. It was all pretty hectic. Murray was the name of a police dog in the canine corps. Murray Dohu was from the Isle of Man, and he never grew a single grey hair in his fur, never failed in his strength, and he never grew any older. Sometimes he helped us on cases. He never talked when there were normal people around, and I always found him surly and sour when he did talk. Sly was just dog people, I suppose. I could just picture them slobbering and grinning together. Now, with those files, Sly was saying, breaking into just such a grin as I had imagined, the police commissioner, O'Hanlon, believed me when I told him that there was one guy behind it all, fixing everything up. Not your fixer theory again, I groaned. A Napoleon of crime, a spider in the maze. You read too many dime store novels. I dinna believe in coincidence. Who else could get half-deads of undersea and the man-eating mermaids and human gunrunners to mesh like clockwork? Tirnathun, Tirfathun and the Tirnanog and great Nodins who reigned in drowned Atlantis, all singing from the same sheet music. And the lighthouse witch. She had fooled you your whole life. Us. Fooled us. Someone is coordinating all this. The fixer is just another one of your dumb ideas. You'll have the business ruined in no time, without me. Actually, Harvey the Pooka believes me, said Sly with a bit of a smirk. That drunk bunny. He's got friends at court. He knows Kanachi, Campbell's sister. And she sometimes lends me her ring for shadowing jobs. And so business has been picking up. The smirk grew more prominent. He actually was enjoying the chance that never happened in life to tell me this. To say, I told you so. A kind of dull silence rested in the room. I wish he'd offer me a chair. I wish I could sit down. I was beginning to resent how comfy he looked in my chair. It burned me to think that all those years, without a word, without a sign, he had been jealous of something as petty as a chair, a view through a window. I guess you never really know people. He straightened up in my stolen chair and put his hands on the cigarette case. His voice was a wee sharp now. Nice catching up with you. Good luck in the next world and all that. Can you depart now and stay departed? Why, are you having nightmares about me? I am not the one that killed you, Matt. I keep telling you that. And I already said I know that. I know who killed me. You must know too. You must have figured it out. I pointed at the drawer marked A, the top of the filing cabinet. I was just as surprised as he was when the drawer unlocked itself with a click and slid open. It wasn't me doing it. I'm not a poltergeist, just an ordinary ghost. Poltergeists are driven by anger, damned to continually visit the same few spots over and over again, screaming in rage, throwing fits and stones. They are the only ghosts so heavy with anger that they can touch the mortal world. But the door came open and kept coming. It made a metal screech as it came. Slowly it tilted. Sly watched it with his eyes wide and wet with fear. It fell to the ground with a clatter like a cymbal, shockingly loud. The drawer was entirely empty. There was nothing in it. The aspergillum of holy water, blessed by an archbishop, was gone. The one I had used to burn an arch-vampire into nothingness. The bottle of pills imported from Jamaica that were used on the sunlit people if they saw something they weren't supposed to see, that was also gone. The automatic was gone, as were the clips of silver bullets, also expensive, also gone. The relic of St. Albie of Emily, which no wolf or werewolf could approach, because of one act of kindness long remembered. That was gone, and it was priceless. A was for aspergillum. A was for amnesia. A was for automatic. A was for Albie. Funny, wasn't it? My life was full of little jokes like this. I felt a pounding sensation in my brain again, and I didn't even have a brain, only a memory of a brain. Where's all our stuff? Our gear? Is it all gone? I looked again at the new carpet, the newly etched window with the expensive lettering only dusk people could see. What did you do with it? Sell it for money? I didn't have a key to that drawer, remember? Said Sly, his voice suddenly firmer and harder and colder than I had heard it before. He continued, I dropped it down a storm drain when Mayor's brother, wearing his rat skin, bit me. Remember? Such an expensive key, made of orichalcum from Atlantis and silver from the mines of the dark side of the moon. Because you insisted on a lock made by elves. A labyrinth lock no human could pick or force and no gypsy could charm. There were only 2 keys and mine fell down the storm drain. You never forgave me. I wasn't listening, I was too busy shouting. Did you sell my relic, which my grandfather brought all the way from Tipperary, for money? For daylighter money? My anger was palpable. I could see the papers on the desk fly into the air. The lamp fell over. The windows rattled in their panes, and a dozen little dust devils of wind started whipping around the room. Did you sell them all? All the tools and weapons of the work? You dinna remember, he said in a cold, hard voice of his. You are becoming empty, Matt. Soon you'll be nothing but rage and wind. The whirlwind started screaming stronger, and the potted plant, of all things, jumped up into the air and cracked him sharply across the face. The pot broke with a bright, sharp sound, like fine china breaking. Dirt sprayed across the drapes and window behind it, and the shard of pot hit the wall and ceiling. There was blood all over his face, both from the cuts on his cheeks and foreheads, and gushing from both nostrils. Then, too late, I remembered where I had heard him speak that way before. He never talked to me in that tone. He only got that hard note in his voice when he was confronting something from the darker world. Something from deeper in the twilight than humans can safely go. Something nearer the night. Suddenly I stopped and got hold of myself. The papers fell to the ground and the lamp toppled, but slowed for no reason before it hit the floor and didn't break. It was me doing it. I was the cause. Mary, Mother of God, I shouted. I am not a monster. I am not haunting you. You just feel guilty because you stole Lorelei from me. But it was too late for a talk. Not bothering to wipe his face, he held up his hand, and in it was something he had hid in a silver cigarette case. It looked like a small and delicate flower from the blackthorn tree. The little flower throbbed and vibrated with more life heat than any living human could hold. Not all the weapons of the work are gone. And he said the name of the big black cat.